So we're holding in Sha'ar base of the Nefesh HaHaim. We completed Perek Yud base, and we actually began Perek Yud Gimel, but we should review. And the topic is davening in general, and the Nefesh HaHaim has laid out a very, very high vision for sort of the meaning and even the activity of prayer. And it's about sort of embracing God's pain. And when a Jew is suffering, and right now we're all experts in Jewish suffering, when the Jewish people are suffering, so the Shekhinah is suffering. And there's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin like that. Bizman Ish Mi Yisrael is hurting. Ma Shechina Omeres Kalani Roishi Kilani Zroye. I have a headache, my arm is hurting me, whatever high ideas about the intimate connection that Hashem feels with the Jewish people. We have that pasuk that says, Imo Yanoichi B'tzara. God says, I'm with a Jewish person in his suffering. And so the Nefesh HaHaim said that when you're davening, even like something for refuah, which is personal and seemingly physical, but your kavanah should really be not for your own pain, but for the pain kaviyachol that's being caused in the Shemayim to the Shekhinah, which is a very esoteric idea. And the question is, so how is that practical for us? Can we really think about divine pain when we're very much caught up in our own lives? Davening is something we think of for ourselves. It's for what we call Chayei Shah. It's for life in this world. We daven for parnasa and for good health and long life and peace in our land and things that are, very concrete and relevant to us right now. And yet he's raising the level of our awareness and claiming that the focus of our davening should be in this very high esoteric divine place. And so how can we synthesize that with reality where we really live, and with the Shemona Esrei that we daven, which is seemingly about the physical things that we know. We have in it das, we have tshuva, we have geula, refuah, parnasa, and those are things which we recognize from our daily lives, and we understand our need for them. So how do we bridge this gap to his esoteric explanation of the act of prayer? And the answer he gave us right here in this first paragraph of how to do it. And the answer in a sentence is focus on the words, okay? And even on the letters. Va'etza hayutza alzeh. So the advice offered about this, ukemoi she'amar amagi la Beis Yosef. So the Beis Yosef, of course, Rabbi Yosef Karo lived 500 years ago, and he's the Shulchan Aruch, he's the Kesef Mishnah, he's the Beis Yosef, and he was a giant of prayer, of Torah, but he reached a level. One of the things he did in his Torah study was recitation of Mishnayos. He used to recite the Mishnayos over and over again until he was zoiche to something called a magid, which is like the spiritual voice. And the way the Sfarim Kedoshim explain it, it was like the voice of the Mishnah. He had so much identified himself with the Mishnah that the Mishnah spoke through his throat, as it were. He had this divine voice, this heavenly voice that spoke to him and revealed secrets of the Torah to him. And that's called the Magid. And there's a sefer called the Magid Meisharim of things that the Beis Yosef heard and learned from the Magid. So
this is different than what the Ramchal had?
Yeah. I don't know about a Magid and the Ramchal.
This sounds like a higher level.
Yeah,
this
right.
Sounds like a higher level. They probably didn't vilify Rav Yosef the way they did the Ramchal.
Yeah, right. 200 years earlier, the Rav Yosef Karo was before Shabtai Tzvi. That's another nafkamina between the Ramchal and this period. So they were already scared about from the Kabbalah. Yeah. So the Magid revealed to the Beis Yosef, Be'azhara, Sefer Magid Mesharim Zal, Lizaher milachshov b'shat hatfilah, b'shum machshava, afilu shel Torah mitzvahs, ki im b'tevois hatfilah atzmam. The Maggid told the Beis Yosef, be careful not to think about any thought during prayer, even Torah and mitzvahs. Only focus on the words themselves. Duk bidvarav, look carefully what he said. Shelo amar lechaven bekavanat atevot. He did not say focus on the meaning and intent of the words. Ki be'emes be'oimek pnimius kavanas atfila. If you would try to get to the depth of the meaning of the words of the prayer, ein itanu yodea adma. Nobody could do it. We're not on the level to understand the depth of the kavanah of the text of the Shmona Esrei. Ki gam ma shenizgal elanu ktsas. Kavanoi satfila mirboiseinu rishonim zal kadishe elyon ve'ad achron harav hakadosh ish Elokim noira rizal. With everything we have, all the commentary we have in our Sidurim, up through the Arizal, who really revealed a lot of stuff, it's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. Einam be'erech af ketipa min hayam. Kalal neged pnimius oime kavanus anshe knesset gdoila mitakne atfila. It's a drop in the ocean compared to the depth of meaning and power that the Anshe Knesset Gdoila, who enacted the Nusach of the Shmona Esrei, they were 120 Zkenim, Umehem, Kama Neviim, including the prophets Haggai and Malachi and Zechariah. So there's so much depth and power in the Shmona Esrei. There's no way we could fathom it. So don't go there. Don't over-analyze the meaning of your Shmona Esrei when you're saying it. Just say the words with concentration on the words. Okay?
You mean,
yeah.
A little confusing for me now, because I've been trying to think about this lately. So it's like, all right, you dominate, Ava, Gvura, Bina, Refuah. So I'm trying to think, like, because if I just let it go, I'll be thinking of what I'm supposed to do, after shul and everything. There's 1,000 things you can think of. So I've tried to look. Oh, okay. This is okay. I'm trying to try to imagine the avo, and then Mashivur. Okay, I'm thinking of Refuah, Bina, whatever it is, Chonenadat. So if you're not, what does it mean to focus on the words, but you're not focused on the meaning?
Yeah.
How are we separating this?
Okay. I think he's going to explain a little more.
Or give me an example to follow, maybe.
Okay. I say put your finger on the words in the siddur and look at each word as you say it. Baruch, Atah, Hashem, Elokei Abraham, etc., etc. And look at the Aleph and the Lamed and the Hey and the Yud. And he uses a lashon ketinoik ben yomo, like a child learning to read. And
so the kavanah is kavanah to say it correctly, but not necessarily. You're not going ba'omek to think about what it's strange. Like you're not really thinking about what you're saying in terms of the tochen. It's more like you're going to get the form right over the substance.
Again, our assumption here, I think, is that you understand the meaning of the Hebrew words. Okay. He's going to talk, there's going to be a note here about praying in other languages, but the assumption is you understand the simple meaning of the words, and you're focusing, like you said, on the form and uttering them properly, and you are investing your whole persona. You're totally focused on what you're doing. So like you said, you're not thinking about your shopping list or the things you got to accomplish later. You're focused on what you're doing, and you're focusing on each word as you utter it without, I'm going to say, over-analyzing it in its kavanas, because those are endless and infinite, and we don't have that capacity. I think, that's how I understand his vort. I've heard about this from my rebbeim, and this is something that I do try to do, that it's a little bit of a meditative experience, the Shmona Esrei, like this. And I sometimes, I like, if I'm doing good, if I'm myself and I feel put together, I daven with my eyes closed, and I think through the words. I picture the words of the Shmona Esrei one by one as I say them. And that's a very calming and, as I say, meditative, mindful experience of unifying my person, myself, with these words of prayer and like delivering them to Hashem, and He will do with them all the things He needs to do because they've been formulated by great men of prophecy, and this is our avodah. We are doing divine service. Like I'm offering up a sacrifice. I'm offering up these words, these holy Hebrew words, and all the secrets and the nuances and the powers within them, and I'm delivering that all onto the mizbeach of prayer. So let's see how he explains it.
Sounds very similar to something I said on Shabbat to some company. She was saying, like, we're doing a lot of Tehillim now, and she's finding a lot of it tough, and it's poetic, and she's good in Hebrew, but she doesn't fully understand. And I said, you know what? I don't worry so much about the meaning. I fully trust David Melech and the few others who contributed. I said, and even in I referred to the Shemona Esrei, the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, I trust what they wrote. I really do. Good. So I'll say the words, and like that story with the little kid who didn't know how to daven.
Yeah, he just whistled.
Recited the alphabet and said, "God, you put the letters together for me." So I'll say the words, and God can do with it what He wants. Exactly. I trust the writers wrote the right things.
Yeah, that's the spirit of this. That is okay. Exactly it. Because Mevin Yavin Delo Asi Inish Al Yabeshta Shayucha Letaken Tikun Nifla V'Noira Kazeh. We all understand that nobody today would have the capacity to be able to compose such a powerful prayer. Lichlol v'lignoz b'matbea tefila kvu'a v'stura b'nusach echad hatikunim shel kol ha'olamois ha'yonim v'tachtoinim b'sidrei pirkei HaMerkava. There's the capacity with the words of the Shemona Esrei to bring about all these rectifications in all the higher and lower realms, everything that's going on above and below. Shebechol pam shemispalalim yugram tikunim chadashim besidur ha'ilamois ve'akoichois ve'amshachas moichin chadashim acherim. This is an interesting point, that every time you daven, it's different. Every time you daven, it's new. And, it's not the same you're davening on the 4th of December as on the 3rd of December. And, Chav Kislev is different than Yud Tes Kislev. And every day, and every Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, there's new things happening. And the Shemona Esrei is this framework that contains within it this dynamic power to bring about rectifications on all these levels. Sheme'eis shetiknua. Ad bias hagoyel bimheira biyamenu lo hoya velo yiyah shum tfila befratus doime lechaverta shekodem la ve'acharei klal. No two tfilas are identical since the beginning of its enactment till the end of time. The levushim, he gives an example. The clothes you wore yesterday aren't like the clothes you wear today or tomorrow. Levushin de lavish b'tzafra lo lavish beramsha. With the lavish beramsha, lo lavish betzafra. You wear something in the evening different than what you wear in the morning. Moshe kaseh betikunim. V'chein kol yom lechaveiro shelafanav achrav. V'lechein amru chazal. This is an interesting vort. There's a Mishnah in Chagiga that says me'uves lo yucha liskoin. There's a mistake that you make that there's no way to fix it because it's like aver yomoi batal korbano. And one is Zeshabito Kriyat Shema, O Tfilah. If you missed it, you missed it. And even though there's something called Tfilas Tashlumim, where you daven twice in the next prayer, but that's different than really davening the right prayer at the right time. And because you missed it at the right time, it can never be made up. There's going to be this eternal lack and this gap in the spirituality of the universe because of this prayer that you missed. So there's something important happening every time we daven. That's for me the take-home point. Mishar Tefillah in Sham. V'hu bilti efshar im lo al yedei hanevua el yoina v'ruach kadsho yisbarach asher hoifia aleim hofa'at suma be'istikun nusach matbea tefillah ve'abrachos. How did this happen? How were they able to do that? It clearly happened through an act of prophecy. They were endowed with a great level of prophecy at this time, and that's how they created this nusach. Sham hu yisborach shmo, sam hu yisborach shmo b'fiam elu atevos sfuros v'genuzos b'soicham kol tikunim. There's a lot of Torah. We don't spend a lot of time on it, but counting the letters and the words and the various brachas of the Shmon Esrei, how it corresponds to different shemos and different things. There's a real lot going on there. It's tremendously thick and rich poetry. Lezot mihu asher amad besod Hashem al oime kavanasu yizbarach shmo eze derech yishkon oire shel kol teva pratis mehem. So how do you do it? Elish ha'ikar be'avodas hatfila. So the essence of the prayer service is shebe'ez she'adam moitzim mipiv kol teva me'atfila. At the time that you utter each word of the prayer, Yitza'er lo az b'machshavto ota hateva be'oisioiseha ketsurasa. As you pronounce each word of the prayer, visualize in your thoughts the word as its letters appear. Okay? Be'oisioiseha ketsurasa. V'lechaven lohoisif al yada koyach hakedusha sheyase pri lemala. Laharbois kedushasam v'oiram. And like you're saying, you're giving it up to Hashem to do with it as He will. You're giving Him these words and letters and setting them free and putting in them your energy that you have as a Jewish soul, and then Hashem will take them and they'll go on high and do all the things that they're supposed to do. K'moshe b'perek yud shelechei nikras atfila dvarim ha'oimdim berumo shel oilam shekol teva b'tzurasa mamish Hi ha'oila lamala mala kol achas lemekoira v'shorsha lif'ol pe'ulois v'tikunim nifloim. The words of our prayer fly higher and higher, each one to their source, their root, to perform wondrous actions and rectifications. And if you do this, if this is how you try to daven, it's a skula nifla. Baduku munuseh lemargilim atzmam bezeh. It's a good way to open up the gates of prayer for oneself, to make prayer a more meaningful activity and to have more kavanah in prayer. Levatil hasir me'alav bezeh kol machshavos havalim hatordot uminiot tarat machshava ve'kavanah. It helps get rid of distractions and thoughts that disturb us during prayer. V'kol asher yosif hergelo bezeh. If you continue working on this, on the act of prayer, of picturing the words and the letters as you say them, Yitoiseflo tahara b'machshavto b'tfila v'hi kavana pashtis. This is the simple intention, and it's something to work on. You can work your whole life on this because it is like a meditative practice. And people who are into meditation, it's something they could do every day, and they grow in their inner energy, which releases through their life. Okay. Now, what about the fact that you could daven in a foreign language? How does that fit in here? So, Hagam shel halacha psuka b'shas shetfila nemeret b'kol lashon. You could technically daven in English. Hainu lotzes yedei mitzvahs tfila. That would be in order to fulfill your obligation. We learned in the Rambam that there's a mitzvah to daven once a day. So the obligation to pray once a day could be discharged through praying even in a foreign language. So Sha'ar aleph shebekola mitzvahs afilu mitzvahs tefila shenikras avodah shebelev im kol zeh ikaran leikuva uchelek ha'maasi shebehen. Even though tefillah is called avodah shebelev, but lemaisa you got to stand there and say the words. So it's an activity, and that activity, that obligation to act, can be fulfilled even if you say it in English. Still, however, omnam la mitzvah min hamuvchar, to do it properly in the best way, vaday tzarech litzaref gam toyar machshava v'kavana shlema. But really, you want to put your thoughts and your kavanas into it. Lefi goydel toyar kavana kein tigdal maisa mitzvah ubefrat avodas halev shebetfila. But the more you put into it, the greater is your accomplishment and fulfillment of the mitzvah. Im ki mish mispala b'kol lashon yatsa yedei chova, aval ein aroch lemish mispal b'lashon hakodesh ve'elu atevos dafka ha'oimdim berumo shel oilam Umidabek kol kochotav behem. But still, it's incomparable. The person who davens in Lashon Kodesh and is releasing all this power of these words and letters into the universe versus somebody who just says the prayer in English, because then it's sort of what you say is what you get. You just said a bunch of English words. You prayed to God. You stood before the king. You asked for the things you need. So you have fulfilled your obligation. But in terms of the impact that you're having on the spiritual universe, it's tiny compared to what you get if you daven in Lashon Kodesh the way it was composed by the Anshe Knesset Gedolah. So that is really the practice that just about everybody we know davens in Lashon Kodesh. It's not common for people to daven in English, and the kids in Cheder and even in America and Europe, where people were not Hebrew speakers and they didn't understand Lashon Kodesh, but learning Siddur, learning to daven was very early on in the curriculum, to learn to daven the words of the Shmon Esrei and the brachas, because there's power in those words. And so that it's really important, and it's correct that even in a shul in America, an Orthodox synagogue where the people can't speak Hebrew and they don't understand Hebrew very well, they still daven in Lashon Kodesh, and that's the right thing because there's so much more power to the prayers that are uttered in Lashon Kodesh than if they would just be recited in English. Okay, so that was Perek Yud Gimel. We're going on to Perek Yud Daled. Omnam biur akasuv hanal. Betchilas dvareinu le'ovdo ubechol nafshechem. Going back to really the beginning of Sha'ar Beis, what is this avoida shebelev, this avoida le'ovdo bechol nafshechem? She'avoida satfila hashlema tzricha shetia im hanefesh. Hu inyan gadol le'yoidim u'mavinim k'tas. V'kasher yasmi da'adam tfilaso bezois madrega. She's barmir Hashem yitoisef lo tahara al taraso. There's room for constant growth. Ki matzinu v'kama koimis b'mikro b'divrei Razal. She'atfila nikres b'shem Nefesh. Ki kama hilchsa gvirta be'ikare atfila ikla mishma mimikroi de Chana. The prayer of Chana before she had children, she was miserable, and she prayed to Hashem. It says al Hashem, and we learn a lot of the halachas of prayer from Chana. I pour out my soul before God. Barchi nafshi es Hashem. Halali nafshi es Hashem. We have a number of these expressions about the nefesh in regard to prayer. V'razal perakam brachos amru shnaim shenitnesu lispalel v'kadam echad mehem lispalel v'lo himtim es chaveiro. So there's two guys, they came into daven, I think Ma'ariv, and one guy finished and he walked out, and he didn't wait for his friend to finish davening. V'yatza. So that was sort of callous and selfish and not considerate. So the halacha, the Gemara says about it, Torfin lo tfilaso befanav. They tear up his prayer in front of him. Shenamar toiref nafsho be'apo. So look at the pasuk that the Gemara used for that, of tearing up his prayer, is tearing up his nefesh. So how does that work? Perish Rashi, L'cha omer asher garamta lecha litrof et nafshecha befanecha, umahi ha-nefesh zu tfilah, k'mo shenemar v'shpoch et nafshi. So the Nefesh HaHaim here is explaining how the word nefesh is associated with the prayer itself. So let's see. What does it mean? Ve'inyin shavodas hatfila hi b'makom avodas hakorban. We know that our davening takes the place of offering sacrifices. The kamosha inyan hakorban. What did it mean when they would, slaughter an animal in the Beis Hamikdash? They would draw its blood, right? The slaughter, the blood would spritz out, and they would be mekabel the dam. They would catch the blood in a receptacle in the clay shares, and then they would sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach 1 time or 4 times or 2 times, depending on which korban. But the ikar ritzui, the main appeasement, the main nachas ruach of the korban, was the blood on the mizbeach, the zrikas hadam. And hadam hu hanefesh. that has to do with the fact that the nefesh is the living soul of the animal, which is here in place of the living soul of the human being. So if our prayer is in place of korbanos, we got to put our nefesh into our prayer. So that's what he's talking about. That avoidus a korban, kamosha inyan a korban ayala halos nefesh habehema lamala. You're taking the soul of the animal, sending it on high. V'chol ikara kapara hayatalui bezrika sadam hu nefesh. Kain haktoras murim, and the same thing of putting the intestines and the chalev, all that stuff that went on the mizbeach. Ikaram hayale kavanat ha'alata nefesh. It's to put the nefesh on high. Kain ikar inyan hatfilahu. That's also the same central idea of prayer. Lahalois v'limsor v'lidabek nafsho lamala. To take our nefesh, our life force, and present it to God and put it on high. Ki koyach hadibur, the power of speech, shela adam, nikra nefesh. K'mo shekosiv vayi adam lenefesh chaya. Parshas Bereshis, man became a being with speech. Targum unklis, the ruach mimalela, the power of speech. V'chein nira le'ein shebekol dibur she'adam yotzim mipiv, yotzim mipiv ruach vehevel halev. Okay, he says a nice thing here. This, the science of maybe the 18th century, but the idea that when you speak, your breath, it has to do with the respiratory system, of course. You breathe in and you breathe out, and speech, you're moving around air. And so that's a function of the cardiovascular system, your heart and your lungs. And so your speech is an expression of your heart and your lungs. Ruach piv, we say. Yotzim mipiv ruach vehevel halev. V'adibur hu ikar nefesh ha'adam. So speech is at the very essence of your soul. Shezayitarona adam min behema. Because really what makes man special above the animals is the power of speech. Imkein kol teva hayotzis mipi ha'adam. Hikoyach v'chelek minafsho. So every word that you utter is really coming from your soul. It's coming from your nefesh, your life force, and through your cardiovascular system. And so it's connected to your life. So it's not stam gesagt. It's a meaningful act, the act of speech. And so by focusing our speech and saying these powerful words of prayer, we are focusing our nefesh on high, as if we had taken the blood of a behema and sprinkled it onto the mizbeach. Very, very powerful parallel of explaining how the Ma'aseh Tefillah corresponds to the Avodas HaKorbanos in the Beis HaMikdash. He has a Hagasha al Yedei HaKorbanot Shebemikdash Shayu Kulam Bedugma Al Yoina Al Yoisa V'Chadara V'Kol Keilav Asher Yesharsu Be'em Hayu Miskashu Misyachdin Al Yedeim Al Oilamos V'Koichos Al Yoinim V'Anoherim Shel Hichalos HaKadoshim Kulam B'Seder HaMadregos La'Ela V'La'Ela Ad Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So look, what went on in the Holy Temple was very holy stuff, sending hashpa and rectifications, tikkunim and light into the highest realms up to Ein Sof Baruch Hu, all the way up to God. Kumuvan, kumuvur b'mekomis rabos b'zohar. Okay, many places in the Zohar. And the call elu ha'mekomis noirois ha'inyin mishar tefillah seder alos v'iskashus b'fratus. Okay, so the korbanos was a really big deal. V'lechein nikra korban k'mo shekasu b'bahir. Amai ikri korban. What is the word korban, which has to do with drawing near? Al shem shemikarev hatzurot hakedoshot. It's a drawing near. It's a bringing of focus and energy, of hiskashus, of connecting things. V'amru l'reach nichoyach haruach yoyred misyached b'tzuras hakedoshos ahem umiskarav al yedei hakorban v'hainu deikri korban. So it's drawing everything near and unification of all these different koichos. Ayin Zor Vayikra, and here and there, etc., Sha'ar Tefillah. So that's why it's called korban. Ume'etche ve'avonenu nifsika avodas beis kodshenu lo nishara rak avodas tefillah bimkoima. We no longer have that capacity to have animal sacrifice and sprinkle the blood and unify these powers. So what do we have? We have prayer. Shigam hi skulata lekasher leyached ha'olamois ad le'ela be'ein sof baruch hu. Our power of prayer is also a skula to unify the oilamos. Kimavur b'mkom Yisrael bezor v'yosim efurish. Here, b'mali tzlusa adbek re'usei kenura begachelta, like a flame on a coal. We can all picture that when you're, at the barbecue, at the ala ish. I have a South African here, so at the braai, you're roasting, and so you have a fire, and picture the burning coals, and there's a flame on the coals. What exactly is the connection between the flame and the coals? The flame is dancing, it's moving around, and the coals are sort of dormant. They're dead, right? They're just, it's just burnt stuff. But there's a connection that it says here, idbak re'usei kenura begachelta, liyachada inun rekiyin tatoyin nesitra de kedusha, le'atra lahon bishma chada tato, umitamen lahala liyachda inun rekiyin iloyin pni moilim mehavi kulu chad. So it's connecting and unifying the worlds up to the highest. And when one serves his master in prayer, his will is bound like the flame to the glowing coal, to unite to those lower heavens that originate on the side of holiness, to crown them with one stage onto another, one from there, continue on to unite those upper inner heavens to unify everything, to make all as one. And while his mouth, be'od bepume v'svase merakshvan, you are saying the words with your mouth and lips, libe yichavin re'use yistalik le'ela liyachta kulu beraza derazin, detaman tekiu dekol re'use umechashvin beraza dekhaim be'ein sof. And so with your mouth, you're murmuring the words. He should direct his heart, his mind, and his desire to rise higher and higher, to unite everything according to the deepest secrets, for there are settled all of the will and the thoughts that are found in the ongoing secrets of Ein Sof. So again, we have sort of the magic. We have the magic of prayer. Prayer is a physical act. We stand there with our feet together. We open our mouths. Maybe we close our eyes, or we put our eyes on the words of prayer, and we utter these words. And then this magic happens. The way that a flame is attached to a coal, so there's this spirituality which is released. Like in the blood of an animal that was shechted in the Beis HaMikdash. Like, what is this goat or this sheep? It's just a goat or a sheep. But we take its blood and we have kavanah to do the mitzvah of a korban oila, and we sprinkle its blood, and it does all this magic stuff of ruchnius. So to our prayers. We come to shul, we do the right things, and our prayer does wonderful things. It has all this impact on an infinite level. Kimuvur shekol ikar kavanas inyan atfilim areshisa ad achar amida hu tikun oilamois visalusa mimata lamala liskasha liskalel kol echad ba'olam she'alav la'ela ad ein sof baruch hu. Our prayers are like chains, are like links. We're linking ourselves to a higher realm, and that higher realm to a higher realm, until everything becomes linked together. Mishar tefila inyan b'klalus. And shezeu achiluk bein brachos hamitzvos v'anenim the brachos hatefila. Shebrachos hamitzvos v'anenim hem hamshachas hashefa la'arka birchon mila mala lamata. The brachos birchos hanenim bor priya eitz, and birchos hamitzvos laniach tefillin is bringing stuff down. Aval birchos hatefila, the brachos of Shmona Esrei, are bringing things up. Heim tikun ha'olamos atzman ve'al his alusam v'srusam kol oilam be'olamu shemei alav. So it's a two-way street. You have brachas bringing things down, and you have brachas taking things up. Ayin reish sha'ar brachas, breish per gimel sham. Ayin hamshachas hashefem mimala lamata. Achar amida v'gam zeu mitzad shechoizenu ma'ilin es oilamos kol echad shelemala mimenu. K'mo shekasu mishar tefila b'reish sha'ar hakadishim. Lezot be'eit omdo lispala lifnei koinu yisbarach shmo yafshid gufo me'al nafsho. Okay, this is a really exalted idea. You should almost remove your body from your soul. Okay, I mean, don't try this at home. This is a tough one. Yafshit gufo me al nafsho. Hainu sheyasir kol ra'ayonei havalim haba'im mikochot haguf שנחקקו ונזדבקו בנפשו, שלא תהיה עבודת תפילתו רק בהנפש ורעוסה אילה delay. So get rid of all the ideas of the vanities resulting from the body's functions that have been graved and attached to the nefesh, so that the prayer service will be performed with the highest aspect of the nefesh and the higher will. So again, that's really challenging. How do you do that? והוא שקודם עמדו בתפילה צריך לבטל ולהסיר מעליו במחשבתו כל תענוגי הגוף והנאיסה וכל ענייניו. If you're thinking about a milkshake or something, or a pizza or an apple pie or something, so that brings down like the koyach of your prayer. You want to get rid of tanugei haguf, of the machshavas tanugei haguf when you daven. עד שיוקבע מחשבתו למאס הגוף, כאילו אינו בעל גוף כלל, as if you had no body. ורק נפשו לבדה היא המדברת תפילתה. You're speaking the words of prayer as if you were a soul without a body. ובדברו כל טבע שהיא כוח וחלק מנפשו. And now as you utter each word of the prayer, ידביק בה ראוסי מאויד, ליתן ולשפוך בו נפשו ממש לגמרי. And so you're putting everything, your ganze Ganzkeit, your whole self, into every word of the prayer. ולהדביקה בשורש העליון של טבע התפילה עומדים ברומו של עולם, כמו שכתוב בזוהר ויקל הנזכר, ובאויד פומד אספסים הרחשבן, ליבי יכוון ראוסי יסתלק לאלה יחתא כולה ברז דרזין דתמן תקיעו כל ראוסי מחשבתם ברז דקיים באין סוף. And so as your mouth is saying the words, your mind, your heart, and your mind are elevating everything to send it to the highest places, unifying the whole world into Ritzainu Yisbarach of Ein Sof.
Sounds very Eastern.
Like a world of meditation.
Yeah, there's like Eastern influences in that it sounds like. And you certainly can't do this by coming late to shul, I'll tell you that much. It's like, no, really, you need to be there like a half hour early to get yourself into a state. Yeah, you can't just rush in and do this.
I agree.
Like many of us do.
The Mishnah on Brachas, right, says that Chasidim are Yushonim sha'achas lifnei atfila umitpalim sha'a and sha'achas achrei atfila. So it was a 3-hour affair. So that is a meditative experience, like an Eastern one.
Bell curve. You know, they start, they get to a peak, and then come down and cool off.
So again, it's very, very high stuff, very high, beautiful ideas. Not, we're not going to get all of it today. But to have a sense that this is possible, and that the Nefesh HaChaim was speaking from experience, and he lived, 200 years ago, and so there is a capacity to
where was he, Rabbi? Where?
In Volozhin, he was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon in Vilna, so he was in Belarus, Lithuania, and so the idea that there's room for growth in prayer. Prayer doesn't have to be superficial or something just by rote. It can be a really meaningful experience that a person can continue to grow in that throughout his life. That I think is promising, because it is something we give a lot of time to, whether we do it well or we do it poorly. From people spend a lot of time in shul and davening. So I think it's comforting to know that if you want to go further in prayer and grow in this, and become a better davener and having a more meaningful prayer experience, the sky's the limit. You could get up to the Kisei HaKavod and into Olam Ein Sof, and there's no end to how high it goes. And we have the tools to do it. You don't have to buy special equipment. All you have to do is open the siddur, look at the words, and say them with kavanah. So I think I love it. It makes me very happy.
It is more difficult. In our our requirement to tefillah b'tzibor, it's harder. This is something that I could see is more matim for hit both right.
I agree with that.
And so, being focused, because there's no matter how focused you are, there's always some guy next to you or who's going to ruin it for you.
That's part of
And
the
and
challenges.
and that whole concept of this, you need to take your time, and the tefillah b'tzibor, there's tircha tzibor, you can't go too slow, you can't do this, you can't do, it's like the rabbi takes too long in his Kriyat Shema, and you start hear grumbling. So it's which I love it now. I love when the Rav is there because this past year I've been more focused on the psikim, in the Kriyat Shema.
Good for
So I'm
you.
always trying to get those psikim in and like not fall too far behind. And when he's there, I can chill. I can say
Nice
it
and slow.
nicely with all the
Get back.
psikim.
She's Gavlut Seinu. Hashem should answer our prayers and bring us
Man,
Geula Shlema Bimheira Mamish. We need it really bad.
man.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here with me. Looking forward to
Yishkov.
seeing you next week. Take good care.
Okay, thank you, Yishkov.
Thank you, Ravi.
Good night.